guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be doing my makeup and discussing a true crime or true horror case. If you're squeamish, if you're scared, if you're not interested in true crime or true horror, I completely understand. It's okay to click off. I'll see you guys very soon with a makeup tutorial with no spook. So for those of you who want to jump straight into the true crime, I will have a timestamp in the description or in the comments. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing the Amityville horror, both the true crime and the true horror aspect of it. And it is a very famous case. It even has like multiple movies on it. It was one of the huge cases, even one of the biggest cases that Ed and Lorraine Warren took off. But I need a couple of things that I need to make clear before I jump into the story. For me, I really like true crime and makeup, so I thought, why not club them both together, right? But so I was like, okay, let's do it, but I wasn't sure if this was actually a thing. So I went on YouTube and I searched. I did a little search. I was like, makeup and true crime, and turns out there is a lady called Bailey Sarian, and she's amazing. She does murder mystery makeup, I guess, every Mondays, and it's really, this is inspired by her, but I'm not copying her. It's just my interest, and there's nothing wrong if I want to club true crime and makeup together. I hope you guys would understand and not be a bad person about it. And yeah, now that all of that is out of the way, let's head into the spook. The following video is intended for mature audiences only. The video contains graphic description of crime scenes, adult language, and adult themes. Viewer discretion is advised. Also, before we head into the video, if I miss out on any details, or if by chance if I mispronounce anything, or please let me know, but nicely. Thank you. So the center of the Amityville horror is a mass murder that happened in that house, and it is 6 bodies in a single night, all perpetrated by Robert Butch DeFeo Jr. Let's start with Butch's family, alright? So Robert Butch DeFeo Jr. was the eldest kid among 5 other children, and he belonged to a pretty well-to-do family. Now, Robert DeFeo's father, Robert DeFeo Sr., was a piece of work. He was not a nice person. He was like very abusive. He was very abusive especially towards DeFeo out of the kids. For some reason, I don't know why. He used to like throwing Butch into the walls, and he often used to hit Butch head first. So Robert DeFeo Jr. does have that classic head injury. Now, Robert DeFeo Sr. was also very abusive towards his wife. He used to constantly beat her up, and this man, DeFeo Sr., he made the entire environment of the house very hostile, and he was just not a nice person. He was the kind of person who used to, he would abuse the family very much, but he would shower them with money, and he used to just think that it just all makes it okay if you do that, none of his actions have any repercussion. He can just throw them a party, and that's it. Even if he beats them up the very next day, it's absolutely fine as long as he does that. Now, Robert Butch DeFeo Jr. from the very beginning was a very troubled child. He would constantly get into arguments with his parents in the school. He was constantly getting in trouble, and for some reason the parents thought that spoiling him would actually make him better, so they just started buying him everything and anything that he wanted. Everything and anything that he asked for, they would give him, and they would give a teenager endless amount of money. And by the age of 17, Butch actually started abusing heroin and acids and whatnot, and by the time he actually got to his high school, he was expelled. But that's not a problem, right? Parents are there, and they gave him a job in their family car dealership, a salaried position, and this income actually fueled his addiction. Now, if that wasn't enough, 17-year-old drug addict Butch actually started buying guns, which, I mean, the last thing a tripping 17-year-old should be buying is guns. So I don't know why or how he was just allowed to do that. Butch was 23 at the time of murder, 5'8", husky build, still living at home, still a very heavy heroin and acid user. So on Wednesday, November 13th, 1974, at around 6:30 p.m., Butch ran into Henry's bar yelling for help. He said, "Please, someone help me. I think someone shot my parents." And one of the people that was in the bars, called Ben Skelski, who's actually Butch's best friend, was like, "Yo, dude, are you serious though?" I mean, I don't know how many, I don't know. I've never been pranked by someone saying, "Oh, my parents have been shot dead." What do you mean? Why do you need assurance for that? So after they were all assured, so these guys, along with 4 other people from the bar, they hop on in their cars and they're like, "Okay, let's just go and check it out." Which, I mean, what if the perpetrator is still there with the guns? You can never be too careful, right? So the victims were Robert DeFeo Sr., 43, Luis DeFeo, 42, and 4 kids, Don, 18, Allison, 13, Mark, 12, and John, 9. All of them were shot by 35 caliber lever action 336 rifle at around 3 a.m. at night. And for those of you who don't know, 3 a.m. is called as the devil's hour, and that's because it is the mockery of the Holy Trinity. The parents were both shot twice and the kids were shot once. Physical evidence show that the mother and the eldest daughter were actually awake at the time of the death. All of the victims were shot in their back and all of them were found laying on their stomach. One of the mysteries is that the 336 Marlin rifle is actually super loud, and in an experiment done by the investigators, they said that sound could have been heard 3 to 4 blocks away, yet no one in the house tried to, escape, or none of the neighbors heard any of the gunshots going off last night. And the maximum that the journalist and the investigators got was that they heard the family dog barking all night, but no one heard the gunshots going off that night. So now Butch was taken into investigation as he was the only surviving member of the family. And Butch initially told the police officers that the killings were carried off by a mob hitman who was his father's friend, but after a falling off, the person actually, quote unquote, said he would whack Robert DeFeo Sr. and his entire family. I mean, okay. But the police was having none of it and they were like, "Oh yeah, right." And after 12 hours of investigation, the Robert DeFeo Jr. finally admitted to killing his entire family. He said he got the idea of murder by watching Castle Keith, and he told the cops, quote, "When I started, I just couldn't stop. It all went by so fast." He also admitted that he actually took a bath and changed his clothes, and then he later detailed where the crucial evidence such as his blood-stained clothes and the Marlin rifle was. Trial began on October 14th, 1975, and his defense lawyer William Weber maintained a affirmative defense of insanity, claiming that Robert DeFeo Jr. actually killed his family in self-defense as he overheard his family plotting to kill him while he was watching Castle. The family was doing everything they could for him, so I honestly doubt that. And the thing is, this was just one of the many stories he said. He kept on changing his stories. He kept on changing stories after stories. Like, he probably said 100 stories, and he said that he kept on doing that to build his insanity case, which, proving a case of insanity in court is very, very difficult, and being stupid is not a way to prove insanity. That is stupid. Another interesting story that he told was that a female demon dressed in a black robe actually handed him the gun and asked him to kill his entire family while he was on acid. I mean, if you're going to do so much drugs and acids, you're gonna see much worse shit you're gonna see much worse than that. You're tripping, bro. Stop. Now that he had represented a case of insanity, the court psychiatrist said that although he does like a lot of acids and heroin, most he had was an antisocial personality. Like I said before, Butch was a very troubled kid, and even in the documentary Amityville Horror, a lot of people actually said that as soon as they heard the news of the murders, the first thought that came to their mind was Butch did it. And a year before the murder, the parents and Butch actually went to see a psychiatrist in Brooklyn, and the psychiatrist actually very bluntly told the parents that, you know, he would kill you one day if you're not going to do something about his situation. So on December 4th, 1975, Judge Thomas Stark sentenced DeFeo to 6 concurrent sentences of 25 years to life. I think it means that he can serve all 25 sentences together, but I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong. All of his requests and appeals for parole have been denied till this day. Now wait, hold on, this is not where the story ends. We're done with the true crime part. Now we head on to the true horror part. So I am someone who does believe in all the spook and paranormal stuff, and I do think that something like this could definitely create the Amityville haunting. But the question is it a residual haunting or a demonic haunting? Now, for those who don't know what residual haunting, it would be like, you know, haunting caused after a trauma. So the murders would have caused a residual haunting. Now there are claims that this was actually a demonic haunting, and that is the reason that Butch DeFeo ended up murdering his entire family, which I am not sure if I completely agree to that, because I do think that Robert Butch DeFeo Jr. was a ticking bomb waiting to set off. But no one knows, right? Because no one hearing the gunshot is still a mystery, and I don't know the answer to it. Tell me, what do you feel about it? So 2 weeks after George DeFeo Jr. was pronounced guilty, George Lutz with his wife Kathy and their 3 kids moved into the DeFeo residence, still furnished by the DeFeo furniture. Ooh. It was 13 months after the murders that the Amityville haunting began. Now you must be wondering if the Lutzes knew about the murders, right? Because who would move into a murder house? Yeah, that's what I thought. This was all over the news, and Lutzes didn't know about the murders, and they had a little family meeting where they discussed if everyone was alright, you know, moving into the house. I cannot wrap my head around it, how everyone was like, alright, horror house expedition, yeah. They said that it was a great deal that they got of the house, as the house had a boathouse, an attic, it was Dutch colonial, it had a swimming pool, and all of those fancy things. Now when he says it was a great deal, I have a question. Were they getting paid like $80 an hour to stay there? Like, if someone gives me that money, I would consider going into that house. Otherwise, no. Actually, I won't go into that house. Never mind. According to Lutzes, paranormal activities began happening almost immediately after they moved in. Pretty good reason to move out, you know. Just saying. They had a dog named Harry who was tied to a tree, and the dog actually tried to hang himself while he tried to jump off the fence while his collar and his chain was still attached to the tree. I mean, please listen to your dogs, dude. Even in Conjuring, when Sadie was, you know, when they tried to get Sadie into the house and Sadie was like, oh no, I am not going into that house. Please listen to your dogs. Dogs know, just listen to them. Animals know. So due to the property's reputation, a family friend asked them to get their house blessed. So they asked a priest to come over. The priest was going room to room blessing the house, and he said he heard a very deep voice coming from behind him that asked him to get out, and the priest was slapped. I mean, it's so funny, but it's funny. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but it's a little funny. I always find it funny how ghosts just, you know, slap people. I mean, disrespect. The poor man is just trying to do his job. Later on, that priest developed boils in his hands, which looked like stigmata. Kathy also said there was an odor of a very sweet women's perfume and she said that she often felt like someone was coming up from behind and embracing her, but she said that it was more like a comforting thing, which I don't want that. I don't want any of this. George once described hearing a sound coming from downstairs as, quote, I don't remember this, so I'm gonna read it out. A whole bunch of musicians going each one in the wrong direction and playing their own song like an unorganized musical sound. He said that he heard footsteps coming from downstairs, and every time he went down to check, there was no one. And it's interesting that around this time George actually started acting very weirdly. George's personal hygiene went way downhill, like really downhill. He became obsessed with fire. As he said, he was constantly cold, and he also became obsessed with chopping wood logs. Another thing is that the kids actually started sleeping on their stomach. That is exactly how the bodies were found, and I don't like that. No. After this, things just started getting violent. The DeFeos said that there was an unseen force that ripped doors from the hinges, slammed cabinets shut, and it was just all messy and angry. It just became very violent, and the most famous swarm of insects attacking the family. George started waking up 3 a.m. every night. There was a 12-inch crucifix set by Kathy in the living room, which hung upside down, and there was like it gave a very sour smell. Another weird thing that happened was there was a 4-inch tall China lion ornament in the living room, and George accidentally tripped on it, and when he turned back to see, he saw a bite mark on his ankle. And later this lion ornament would reappear in the living room after he had actually placed it upstairs in the room where the priest was slapped. A very strange thing was said by the youngest daughter of the family, who said she had an imaginary friend named Jody, who was a big demonic pig with glowing red eyes. And Kathy and George mentioned that they actually have seen this red demonic eyes multiple times. I mean, how would you react if your kid says that she is friends with a big demonic pig with red eyes? I don't know. I'm trying like a smoky eye and I'm failing. So on December 1st, 1976, Clovenhoft pig-like footprints were found on the snow, and 2 weeks later, George was woken up by him feeling his bed slamming up and down, and he couldn't do anything because he felt like there was an external force that was trapping him. And that night itself, he saw his wife levitating. He saw his wife levitating off the bed, and he saw her travel towards the corner of the room. And you know what I'll do in that situation? I'll poop my pants. Oh my god. If this actually happened, I have no clue how the person would have, like, how would you react to it? You see your wife levitating up and you're like, honey, you didn't tell me you knew magic. Like, how are you supposed to react to something like that? So the next morning, the Lutzes fled the house, leaving everything they owned behind after 28 days of moving in. Like, I am shook. I don't understand how they lasted 28 days. I would leave the moment my dog tried. Actually, I won't move in. There is something that happened to the Lutzes that they never discuss, and that is something that scared them so much that was like their breaking point. That incident happened and they were like, nope, we cannot stay here, and they never talk about that. So 2 months after the Lutzes left, a reporter named Laura Didio assembled a group of psychics to investigate the family's claims. The researchers went from room to room, assessing every room, trying to catch on any of the vibrations or waves or fluctuations, anything, whatever they do. I am not very sure. The forefront of this research were Ed and Lorraine Warren, they are one of the most famous paranormal hunters or researchers. During a seance, Lorraine Warren said that there was an evil in this house that came from the bowels of the earth and not just the murdered spirits. She said, quote, "I hope this is as close to hell as I will ever get." The Lorraines maintained that the evil in the house was present way before even the DeFeo murders, and they said that the evil affects everyone differently when they're living in the horror. So I think they meant that the DeFeo murders was because of an evil spirit, asking or making Butch DeFeo Jr. kill his parents. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and you never know what actually happened, what actually went down, right? Because there is a lot of evidence pointing towards Butch DeFeo. And he is in prison, I know that, but there are still a lot of claims as to how he might have not actually done that. So that is all that I have on the Amityville horror today, both on the true crime and the true horror. So I want to know, what do you think about Butch DeFeo? Do you think he was guilty? Do you think it was the demon that made him do it? Let me know in the comment section down below. I hope you liked this video. It is a little different from what I usually do, and if you did, you know what to do. Subscribe and give this video a thumbs up and comment down below your opinions. If any one of you wants to discuss about this case, hit me up on my Instagram. I'll have it linked down below in the description box. So yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye. Thank you so much for watching.